just do a catch up, guys. Like, Jack, what'd you get up to over the holidays? I don't
Yeah,
think I
well,
talked to you since
actually, I was just talking to
Christmas.
Kevin about this, but I had some pretty scary news. My dad had quadruple bypass surgery
Oh my God.
a couple months ago, and so yeah, during the break, we got you get that call that you dread, when you're living this lifestyle of being overseas. We got that call that my dad was having some issues. And my brother is a physician's assistant, and his wife is a cardiac ICU nurse, and they just happened to be visiting while he was experiencing some, um, I guess it's called angina, like uh, when the blood is not flowing through the arteries, it's getting constricted or whatever. And so he was having some like back pain, and he was just going to the doctor, and they did like an EKG. He's fine. Um, so he just thought it was muscular, pain or whatever. Ends up 99% blockage of all the major arteries. And
Whoa.
so it was like he was right at the, Occam's razor or whatever, they right on the edge there. I don't know if I'm using that term right. But he was right there, and but so lucky that my sister-in-law is an ICU
That's
cardiac nurse, and so they got him into the doctor. They tried to do a stent, it didn't work. He needed bypass surgery. So, that's a major surgery because they're cutting through the, sternum and to get to the heart. It's open heart surgery. But it all went really well. Got all the arteries got get connected. He was, when I went to visit him, he was still recovering. So, it's tough to see your dad on a walker, It's like
right. So
Yeah.
that's a topic right there that I think we could kind of get into. So you went there.
yeah, we'd already scheduled a trip actually to go to America beforehand, but it just happened to kind of line up with like he was just coming home from the hospital when we got there. So, we weren't able to do a lot of stuff with them. It was just a lot of like kind of sitting
Well,
around
just
the
being back
house.
is important.
Yeah, but
You got to
just
be
being
there.
there, physically to, see him and talk to him and it wasn't like the best timing necessarily, but because it was a little early in his recovery, I think to have people,
Mm.
come in there. He's still got like nurses coming in and doing, occupational therapy and stuff like that, in the house and stuff like that. Um, but it's I'm so glad he's okay. It's just kind of like
When was the last time you went home? When was the last time you saw him?
I saw him about a year ago. So, we go like maybe once a year, once every 2 years, I get home. And so
Yeah,
it had
I get home
been,
every year.
yeah, I would like to. Sometimes it's not possible. It kind of depends on like, I don't know if our listeners know, but my daughter studies ballet at a ballet conservatory in Florida. So when we go, we can visit her and we have reasons to go to Florida, which is where my parents live also. But they live about 3.5 hours away from my daughter's school, so it's not very close. Um, but yeah, it's just, one of those like scary moments, because I remember when my grandmother passed in, I think, 2009. And, that was like, she was 92 years old, so she had lived a full life. And, it's obviously a sad moment, but you can kind of celebrate a person's life. But yeah, now I'm getting to the age, I'm 47 years old. Like I'm almost 50. Now my parents are in that elderly category where
Right.
you just don't know like what's gonna happen. And when you're living, overseas, you're just not like you're not just you can't just, jump over there immediately. I mean I
Right.
would if I had to, but it's not as easy. So yeah,
Yeah,
that
it's
was
the
our winter.
consequences. That's the consequences of one of the consequences of choosing this lifestyle is that especially if you're going to do, I mean, when I say this lifestyle, I don't mean, for the people listening or anybody that might be thinking of going abroad, living abroad for a year, 2 years, or even 5 years. Though at that point, I suppose it starts to add up. But if you end up, in a career and you stick it out for over a decade or maybe two,
Yeah, 2 decades. Yeah.
yeah, just starting to think we're getting there. You are there.
I'm right
Uh,
there.
yeah. So at that point, then reality starts having these other, events happen to you. I had one of my own just a couple weeks ago. My grandmother passed,
Oh, I'm
and
so sorry, man.
yeah, it's in that same category you talked about, losing your grandparent as well. I mean, she was 99.
Yeah.
Um, you know, she would say things like she doesn't know why God keeps her here. She's ready to go. Um, and she lived a very full life, has a, very loving family, everything. But from my experience for this, I'm just back from this big trip back into my, 'cause I travel in the winters. Not I don't go to America in the summer. I go to America in the summer. I don't go to America in the winter. So I came back from this big trip. I smash back into my life here. I've got the semester starting. Everything's happening. I've got like a 48-hour notice. Hey, can you make it? And then I have to make a decision. Am I going to, take a red eye flight? And so I was kind of conflicted. It was really a difficult decision. It's my last grandparent as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So I talked to my parents and felt better about making the decision one way or the other. I felt okay, but I still had to figure out, I felt okay for my community. Like I didn't feel like, I needed to be there for them. They made me feel comfortable with that. I
Yeah.
appreciated that. But I didn't know how I felt by myself. But my mom told me that one of my sisters was going to live stream. They ended up just making a video, which I
Yeah.
said, don't, because that seems awkward and, it's taking you out of the moment. Why do this? But they said it wouldn't be invasive or anything, or they'd use a tripod or something. It ended up being really nice, actually. I really appreciated it.
Yeah.
Uh, so, I mean, these types of decisions, they're
Yeah, a
things
couple years ago, my
think
last time,
about.
actually, the last time I was back in the States was when my grandfather died. Great topic
Right.
for the start of this. Everyone's dying. Um, but the one nice thing about American funerals is that they could schedule them. Korean funerals start like the second the person passes. And so they scheduled my grandfather's funeral like 2 weeks after, partially because like he passed away on Easter Sunday, which actually makes sense because he was crazy Catholic. Um, so they scheduled it 2 weeks later, which was also enough time for me to go back. And I did fly back for it, actually. So I was able to get a ticket. That was like, I understand you not going back, Ryan, because that was just fucking epic. I flew back. I was in the air as long as I was on the ground there. It was it was not fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it was good to be back and see family, and I felt happy to be there for the day. But yeah, it was a rough trip flying all the way to America for 2 days and then flying all the way back. I
Yeah.
yeah,
I,
I
I
got
had my one of my closest friends passed a couple of years ago during COVID. So flying back wasn't actually available, Or, I mean, you
oh
had to
right.
wait 2 weeks or whatever, you have to, it was during those highly restricted the period.
At the
And
beginning.
they did live stream the funeral.
Oh,
And I had the same thought you did, Ryan. It's like I felt like guilty, like, oh man, I'm like watching this on my computer. Is this like is this dignified, And but my ultimately I came to the conclusion that it was really dignified. Like it was like I found it very I felt very emotionally connected to the moment and the group of people. And people that I had talked to and had been emailing and stuff like that were there and but I felt I was able to see it and they did it in a very like on an intrusive way.
Yeah.
So I think I had the same kind of like feeling you did, I think, where it's just like I was able to mourn, like you were able to start the mourning process, even though it was virtual. So
Yeah. And not just to talk about death and that type of tragedy,
Yeah,
but but it's I think it's an important subject we haven't explored before. And so we've talked before about the things we miss out on by being abroad. That's a common theme. I think we've hit that a few times. And I could talk about my, all of us, we could talk about nieces and nephews and, watching our parents get older, not being able to be there, brothers and sisters, lost friendships. We talked about this.
yeah,
But those things are all kind of expected because
hmm,
you're experience them in a small amount every day. But when tragedies strike or other types of events that don't have any, like with your father, there's no warning. It's suddenly a slap in the face. It's like, no, the world's not on pause over there. These things will suddenly happen, and you're not going to get an invitation before the wedding, so to speak. It's just going to be there.
and it's a
Uh,
helpless feeling because
right,
you're kind of pacing around your room like I I need to get in, I need to get to this other place and I can't get there in the time that I need to get there, you know. And when should I go, you know, is he going to be okay, you know? You're kind of waiting, and okay, he's going to be okay, the surgery went well, okay, then I guess I don't need to come, you know. It's just you're doing this like
right.
this, it's a very helpless feeling, you know, because you're do you find like I felt like the fact that I was able to communicate with them in real time so much better, so much more easily than I could maybe 10 years ago or 20 years ago made a difference. I feel like that
So I was thinking,
doesn't.
I mean, just imagine the people who, lived in another country 50, 100, 200 years ago. You'd find out 3 months after someone passed away. You'd get a letter and be like, oh, by the way, so and so passed. And so, like, I mean, technology does make our world smaller. Even though we're thousands of miles away, we can still hang out and be together via, a funeral, which is weird. Or my brother and I these days are playing games together online. It feels like we're sitting on the sofa, next to
Yeah,
each other. And so, like, technology really does help. It's different though, because, like, yeah, being online, now we have to deal with different emotions instead of just finding out about it and being like, oh well, shit, that happened. Now it's like, oh, it's happening now, but it's now on the other fucking side of the world. And so there's different emotions that we have to deal with. Like, should I go to do it? If you get the letter and it's already passed, it's like, oh well, that happened, that's done, and you just deal with it in your own way. But now it's you have these new stresses of, should I go? How can I deal with it? Is it right for me to be online in this situation or not? Which is a very
Yeah,
different, like, way
there's
to
ways
think
to
about it.
slice this, isn't there? Yeah, there's definitely different ways to look at it. Like, I think we all agree in some having the technology to communicate the way we do today is an advantage. That's a pretty easy assumption. Most people are going to agree
For
with
sure.
that. But I like Kevin's example of, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, if you move to another country on the other side of the earth, you are not going to find out about events maybe for months. But also, when you move, when you actually go for the first time and you say, I'm going to move there, you're not going to be there for a week. It's the other side of the planet. And 200 years ago, what would that be? Yeah, that would be,
Take months just to get
it
there.
would take a year. I mean, that's a permanent, you're going to be there for a long ass time. And you've accepted that. So in your mind, you're in a very different, it's a different
different headspace.
psychological
And
space, right? Yeah, you're thinking, I am leaving this life and I'm need to build a life here. And I
Mm-hmm.
wonder, and again, I'm saying in some, having the communications technologies we have today is a benefit. It's better. But I think there are some negative side effects to it in that you don't, people that decide to go work abroad for 2 years, they don't fully commit in their minds because they don't have to. They can be wishy-washy. They don't have to like full send anything. They can just say, well, I'll be in touch with everybody and I'll keep all my options open. Just leads to more I don't know, crisis of choice or whatever you call it. I don't know.
yeah,
But
I think the guilt
Potentially.
the guilt of like it's so easy to for me to contact my parents now that there's no sacrifice. You know what I mean? Like getting on an airplane and making the sacrifice to like what Kevin did, to fly for 14 hours, be on the
Mhm.
ground for 10 hours, and then fly for another 14 hours. Like that takes real sacrifice. It shows like you sacrifice something, money, time, energy, getting on the computer to do a Zoom chat, even though it feels so intimate, it really does. I do feel like I'm closer to my parents now than I've ever been. I talk to them almost every day. You know, just in the morning on my way to school, I'll talk to them. But it doesn't
Good
cost
job.
me anything.
First off,
You know what I mean?
well
Like
done.
it's so easy, you know, like it's just like there's no sacrifice really, other than like me taking a little time out of my day to like log on to the website or whatever, the
Well,
program.
sacrifice is a strong word, and it definitely, I think, describes what Kevin did on his trip. But you're still making an effort, and that's, I think, really important. You know, not just on your part, but also your parents. You're both, you know, taking the time to make that happen every day. That's a big deal. You
Yeah.
can't put that down.
And I think I'm probably just it's probably just in my head, right? It's not on their side. They're just happy to, you know, hey, my son wants to talk to me. Like
Mm.
that's pretty cool. Like if my daughter just made that much effort of to just like communicate with me, you know, like hey, the other
Katie, are
day
you
my
listening?
daughter sent me a
Call your
message.
call your dad.
Well, my daughter sent me a cacao message the other day. She just wrote, it was really cute. She's like, "Have you ever had cheese with sprinkles?" And I was like, "I have." She hasn't, you know, sent me a message just to talk about something random forever. So I'm like, "Did you send this to the wrong person or something? What are you talking about? Like cheese with sprinkles?" She's like, "No, have you ever tried it before?" And I'm like, "No, I've never had cheese with sprinkles." And she's like, "Oh, it's really good. You should try it." So obviously she was just reaching out to me. I think in that moment she was just like, I'm gonna talk to my dad and whatever's on my mind, you know, in that moment, she just eaten cheese with sprinkles.
The
And
hell are cheese? What kind of sprinkles are you putting on cheese?
Yeah,
Is
you
it
got to
like
get
ice
to the
cream
bottom of the
sprinkles?
I
story.
don't
Yeah,
know.
what,
I never really, I
you
just
never learned
assumed
that?
it was like cupcake sprinkles, but you put it on
Yeah,
like
that's what I
cheese.
assume.
Yeah.
That's just weird.
Cheese?
I
What
don't
kind of
know. Yeah.
cheese?
I'm assuming
I'm hoping this
American
is like a
probably.
dorm room experiment and not like a commercial
Maybe
product.
I don't,
That's
maybe what do we have in the room? All right, I've got some
What kind
cheese,
of cheese
I
and
got
what
some
kind of
sprinkles.
sprinkles? I need to know
All right.
at this point.
Oh
Next
man,
episode
I had a
I'll
student, just a nice digression. I had a student who did a presentation. He came back from military service. He was fresh off the boat back here. And he was talking about how where he was stationed, he when they had leave, he didn't have the ability to get back home. He was far away wherever he was stationed. So they would go to the Pyeongjam, to the convenience stores, and that was like their fun thing to do. Would be to get their cup
Yeah.
ramen and whatever, you know, and they
little
would have their
snacks. Yeah.
snacks. But what they did was they had not like a competition, but it was yeah, kind of a competition. Like who could make the coolest thing with all this garbage. So he
Nice.
had all these really funny recipes, and they're all things you could do at the Pyeongjam in the convenience store with the
Right.
microwave, with the cheeses they have, the sausage sticks, the dried fish, everything. And they would make stews and
Nice.
all this stuff and just throw parties there. Yeah, looked
That's awesome.
disgusting. Yeah, just the sprinkles on cheese made me think of it.
No, it was yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I didn't even think about that actually. I was just so amused that she had reached out to
It's
me.
like
I was
my
just like,
daughter's
my
messaged
daughter's
me.
talking to me. Oh my God, you know, like I just want to keep this conversation going, you know, like it's so I mean, I guess like to kind of put a like a period on the like technological you know, grieving thing. I think that, you know, actually I came to the conclusion that I think it's okay to use the technology. Like I think it does. I think it's a benefit more, you know, it's not a it is dignified. Like as long as you're making an effort and you're reaching out and trying to connect with people, um, just because you
Well,
can't
I mean,
physically be
technology
there.
changes communication, like just in itself. I mean, like think about what my brother and his wife, they met on like a some, you know, get married website, right? And when many years ago, when I told people, oh yeah, my brother met his wife online, at the time, this was, already 11 years ago or whatever, but they've been married 11 years ago, so this was a bit more than that. It was like, well, they met online, and this, the internet was still full fledged. It was like, this is a totally, big thing. But meeting someone online, it was like, oh, that's weird. You're supposed to, quote unquote, you're supposed to meet people in person, at the library, at a bar, at a club. I mean, like, not dance club, like, school club, whatever. Um, and then these days now, there's, I think I've seen statistics where, 50, 60% of all intimate relationships are formed on some website or some app or something these days. And so why can't it be used for funerals or family gatherings or anything like that? It feels weird when you first do it. When the people first meet their significant other on the internet, it's like, on the internet, that's not natural. Funeral online, that's not natural, but it is natural. That's just how communication has evolved through our new technology that we have. Like, people meet in new ways. Hundreds of years ago, people didn't meet at the bar because, they didn't go hang out at bars. They would just meet because it was, friendly circles. Well, meeting at the bar, that's a natural. Now that became natural. Next step is online. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just weird when you first do it. But then the more and more people do funerals or weddings or birthdays online, it's like, oh yeah, well, I'm still meeting them. I'm meeting my brother online. I'm hanging out with my brother today. Where? At the bar? No, we're doing Zoom. We're hanging out. So it is. I mean, that's what communication is. That's what technology has given us, the ability to hang out in a new, unique way for whatever
Yeah,
occasion that is.
I think
It-
I think I agree that it's definitely caught on, and communication is going to keep on evolving, right? Like, we start off with writing, and then, letters, and, telephones, email, Zoom calls, whatever continuum you want to draw. But I still think even today, there's still a fundamental difference. I would say most of the people that use Zoom for hanging out would still say that being able to kick it face to face in the room, like the same reason, like the metaverse isn't really catching fire just yet. Like, it just doesn't
Mm,
have that. There's still, like
agreed.
you say, it's awesome that you can, like, play games and feel like you're on the couch with your brother, but, or like
It's
this
not
call
exactly the
right
same.
now. It'd be, yeah,
Right.
it'd be a little different vibe, right? If we were, like, all
Yeah,
in the
no.
same space.
Oh, sure, sure.
Uh,
I'm not saying it's a full replacement, um, but it is.
but
we're
it's a
getting
damn
closer,
good,
maybe.
like, it's a damn
Yeah.
good
I think,
substitute. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, right. Maybe we're
yeah,
getting closer, you
yeah,
know? And as we get closer, those experiences, which we normally would put outside the realm of technology, like finding a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, that becomes not only just more normalized, it does become more normal, as
Mm.
like Kevin's saying. Like, eventually the technology, when it becomes seamless with reality, then there is no difference, you know?
yeah.
I guess that's a kind of a
Well, I
spacey
think
view
like
of it.
with every like new technology, it's always when people start doing certain activities there, like for example, a wedding or a funeral or whatnot, it's always undignified. That's the first word that comes from the kind of older generation, right? It's like we did it this way. Now you're dating online. That's
Yeah.
undignified. Now that whole the undignified element of online dating is gone. And now if you don't do it, you're basically narrowing your pool to like the one municipality where you where you live, like what it opens up the whole world for you. You can meet people from all over the world that maybe have more in common with you.
It
Um,
also just dramatically changes the experience of living abroad, just in general. Like you're
yeah,
saying, a couple hundred years ago, or even 20 years ago, going to another country was like, oh shit. Like Ryan was saying, and it's like you're committed to something massive. Whereas now it's like you can have one foot in, one foot out all the time. You can be dealing like I live in Korea, yes, but I still, doing everything. I still have all my money in America, or I still work for a German company, or
Yeah,
whatever.
it's
It's
like a
it's
new
is
it's
that
very
is that
perspective.
different.
healthy though? I wonder, like let's say like a Hagwon worker, that comes here, and he or she is so homesick that they're just glued to their Zoom or Skype or whatever as soon as they get back from the
Mm,
school, and just trying to keep those connections as strong as they can. you're never really like part of the experience, I think, is breaking those connections to see if they're strong. Can they hold, right? Like my best friend, I can go back and we get together, it's like we didn't miss a beat, you know? But
Hmm.
we're not like talking every day, having, conversations, I don't know what's going on in his, immediate life right now, and he doesn't know what's going on in my immediate life, but we catch up every once in a while through email and stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like you got to cut the umbilical cord in a way, and this allows you to like not do that, which I
Yeah,
think, you know,
it's weird, right? Like it's
Fair point.
yeah, there's obviously like a huge benefit you can't deny, but it leads to these other really strange spaces that you just normally wouldn't end up going to. I had a cool experience last break in the winter. We talked in the previous podcast about reconnecting with old friends
mhm.
and uh, cold calling people and trying to see who's still out there, and positivity that you can find in that. One of my friends met me on the road in Morocco last
Wow,
winter.
that's
Yeah, and
awesome.
so I was doing a personal challenge. I ran the half marathon in Marrakesh, and I'm by myself. So I planned it that way. I didn't expect anybody to join. And so this is one of my friends from high school. And yeah, she shows up. And just to, yeah, we hung out together for like 8 days, I think, or maybe 10 days. And it was, I wrote a little story about it because it was so like a remarkable experience, because it was in some ways, I think, more valuable that we broke off communication for a decade and then we're able to come back. And then when we're reconnecting, we're not just reminiscing and going on nostalgia trips. We're talking about all the things that we've learned and how we've changed. Like we're both really interested in learning about each other. And what we found is that our relationship was able to sustain that break. And that's profound. And you wouldn't have had that type. I mean, is that a trial or a test that you need to do with every relationship? Well, maybe not. But
Hmm.
if you are in a situation where you have that opportunity, it proves a lot about that relationship. Like I think made both of us, I know it made both of us from that recent trip forward to this day, feel much differently about a relationship, that it's much more profound.
I wonder
So
if that's
yeah,
not the
that
title
technology
for
fly in the face of that.
like the title for this episode might be like disconnection isn't always a negative thing. Like
Yeah,
maybe, yeah, like you said, you built up this like reserve of life, just living life, and then man, those 8 days must have been like glorious. Just
or maybe the theme is like justified neglect,
yeah,
right?
justified
Because
neglect,
I feel
right?
like because if you ditch somebody for 10 years but you live in the same town, like we're both in Green Bay, Wisconsin, it's just like, yeah, whatever. It can still be a positive thing, but you have to kind of reckon, why weren't we hanging out? We were right next door to each other, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas if you have an excuse, you're like, yeah, I was on the moon. I was
Right, right.
doing some asteroid mining, you know.
Maybe the reason that like that I don't know. I'm just thinking like out loud here, but when I first moved to Korea, it was more difficult. I had to buy like a calling card, right? To it was kind of expensive and
Right.
annoying, like
I
calling
did that.
cards.
Yeah, I
Um,
remember I used payphones.
yeah,
Same.
like I would talk to my mom, but I'm like, I'm running out of time.
Yep,
Hey,
yep.
everybody okay? Okay, bye. And so you really had to make an effort to call. So, of course, as a young in your 20s, you're just not going to do it, right? You just kind of I'll send the occasional email or whatever. Um, so I had the disconnection, but then the reconnection was the kind of the aha moment where it became now the technology is so much more and even for my parents to be able to use the technology, it took them, there's a lag there, like I
Yeah.
was on Skype long before they ever figured out what Skype was, before they probably had internet in their house.
I
Um,
finally bought my mom an iPad, and it worked out perfect. She keeps it permanently on a stand in the kitchen, which is on this island in the kitchen that like you can rotate between the kitchen and the living room and the dining room. It's like one big center. Their house is strange. It's one big room. So I can be like, bang, my face, Wizard of Oz.
You're in the
I'm there.
right.
Deal with it.
I gave my dad or my parents my old tablet and put Skype
Yeah.
on and Kakao on there, and I'm like, okay, you can anytime you want to talk to me, it'll come right through here. And so they put it on a stand right next to their sofa, and exactly like what you said. And I'm there. I'm in the room, you know. So
Yeah, I can ring the living room, which I just love, like I just, it's always on, click, yep, knock, knock,
that's
knock,
awesome.
there I am. Yeah, it changed things. It was maybe one of the best investments I've made in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Really, yeah. I feel like it became, I guess maybe the 5 years prior, I talked to them maybe as often, but the feeling of not having to really schedule things and to be more spontaneous. It
Yeah.
just feels like I'm dialing up a friend, like it's, 1995 and you're calling your buddy, hey, you want to go skateboarding? It's just like beep, and you don't think that you're on the other side of the planet. So again, I'm going to say the net uh, effect here is positive to have this technology, but there is something. Um, yeah, who was making the point? I forget, it was Jack or
It
Kev.
comes down to sacrifice, I think. Like if it doesn't cost you anything, are you are you actually doing a favor to people? You know what I mean? Like it's the effort to take your time to call them, but it's almost effortless now. Like it makes me feel guilty, you know, for not going home more often because it's so easy.
Well,
I
and
don't
that
feel
creates
guilty. I mean, I do
sacrifice.
feel guilty for not going home, but I feel more guilty about not calling because it's so damn easy. Not going home
Right.
is still not easy. Going home is expensive and takes time and is a pain in the ass. Um, states trips are work,
Yeah.
but not call. I mean, you said you call your mom every day. That's like, good job, Jack. You get points for that because I
I
do
do.
not. I do not talk to my mom every day. It's not nearly as often as it should be. And how easy is it to just be like my mom's got Kakao, she's got internet. It's just like, boom, I could call her much more often than I do. So yeah, it I mean, I think we've mentioned this before. It's like it's so easy to do it, yet it's so hard at the same time. I think we talked about this a while back, but yeah.
Yeah, I tried to do this brings me back to, I came to Korea twice, right? So I came here, I left, and then I came back. And when I came back, I had this idea in my head that I didn't want it to be like the last trip with my relationships, that I felt I was losing a lot of my relationships, not just family and friends, also professional relationships, everything. And I couldn't figure out how to prioritize things, kind of like crisis of my life anyway. But I couldn't figure out how do I manage all this? And there's got to be a way that's really simple. So my big brain idea was, all right, every Sunday, I'm going to write one email to one person. That's it. And so I made a list of all the people that I want to contact. And there's no priority in this list. You're just on a rotation. So if it's your week, you get a letter. You can imagine how stupid this was, right? Because that only works if it's a one-way street. If you write a letter, someone's going to write back to you, right? And
Yeah.
then what do you do? Leave them hanging for 20 weeks?
But then
Like,
Sorry,
you're
it's
gonna
not your
yeah,
turn for a
right.
reply.
They're gonna reply, and then they're gonna be like, so tell me about this thing you
yeah.
mentioned, and then you don't do it for another, yes, I'll see you in 6 months.
Yeah, so basically I just pissed off everybody. It's like, oh, great, Ryan contacted me. Oh, he's a flake? Great. Yeah.
Yes,
So
you're right. You're right.
yeah, there's no easy solution.
But I mean, it's a full-time job managing all those connections. Like you're gonna like you have to disconnect. I mean, it really is just it's part of the I don't know if Kevin mentioned it's part of the lifestyle. Like if you're moving halfway around the globe, there's going to be a disconnection there, and there should be. It's I think it's a natural thing. Like
Yeah, and I like that description. I was about to say, not sure if Kev you said or Jack. I think Jack you were saying about the average, not average, but you'll meet, some Hagwon teacher that's going to be here for a year, or even 2 years, and that's their plan, but they're living like 70% still in the world that they came from.
Mm.
And I know this character type. You've met people like this. I mean, there's,
Yep.
you know, certain parts of ourselves had this, you know, I'm sure this is in all of us, but I've met people that are that stereotype, and they're just missing so much of the experience of being abroad. And part of that is the suffering of losing those connections, maybe temporarily, maybe testing them beyond their limits and having them break. That's the drama of going abroad. I mean, living abroad is a romantic ideal. It's not rational. You know, there's many more rational ways to live your life. Uh, so you're doing something that you're going to put yourself in a position of suffering a little bit, and that's part of what makes it special. And I think that gets lost with
I think as well, though, this is a new framework for the same thing that's happened over and over and over again for hundreds of years. You know, like maybe 20, 30, 50, 100 years ago, when people first came to Korea, they couldn't escape back to America on the internet via Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or whatever, the way people do today. But instead, they would hang out in their expat communities. And
Mm.
then there were the other people who would escape the expat communities. So it's the same thing. You choose to go abroad, and how do you deal with being abroad? Are you the type of person who is just going to dive into the new culture? Are you the person that's just going to be like, I'm part of it, but I'm more imperialist, and I'm going to be like hanging out, in Korea and Itaewon all the time? And I mean, I spent tons of nights in Itaewon, nothing against it, but at the same time, I've also, tried to make Korean friends. But I've talked to students, who've gone and lived in Canada for a year, and they come back and their English isn't any better. And it's like, well, why not? It's like, oh, because I was hanging out with my Korean friends all day, every day.
Mm.
And this was 10 years ago, before it was all internet. So again, we have the same issues that are happening many years ago. It's just technology changes the way we approach these issues of living abroad and how we communicate with people. It frees us up for some things, and some things it makes it harder, but it's the same things just recycled in a new way, I think.
Oh man, we're kind of talking about an older, or like not older, like a relative kind of tired point that you hear a lot in the media and in conversations, aren't we? Like this is kind of like the same thing as what am I thinking of? You know, like echo chambers and stuff like that. Like we're more connected now than ever, but because of that, we're
We're
just more
unhappier than we've
insulated.
ever been, you
Or
know? Yeah.
we're yeah, but we're more insulated because we're more
Right.
connected
Mm.
than ever. You know, there's that quality as
Yeah, I've
well. So
heard
like
that,
what Kevin said,
definitely.
it's the same concept. You're just stuck in your echo chamber of Itaewon. You
Well,
know,
I love that
I
you
lived in
use the
one
word
for 6
suffering.
years. I
Oh,
had friends
sorry, go
that
ahead.
never left Itaewon. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, I had guys that
I agree with you 100%. The point you made about suffering is I think the key is when you feel that suffering, that those pangs of like homesickness or desire for your culture, what you're used to, do you push through, or do you run back to soothe yourself? Itaewon is soothing, right? Or jumping on the internet to talk to your friends back home from high school is soothing, but is it actually helping you grow if you're pursuing this lifestyle? you know
yeah.
um so do you lean into the Korean element of it and push yourself into areas of discomfort, long prolonged periods of discomfort, or every time you feel a little discomfort, do you run back to your your comfort zone, which is
Yeah,
so much easier to do?
but I also wouldn't, just for the listeners, I don't want to malign people that spend their time with expat communities. Definitely my life here has
Yeah, I
been
was I
down.
was thinking the same thing.
Because like think about it. It's a real big difference if you go abroad with a friend and then you guys are like exclusive and you never hang out with anybody else. Like I've met couples that are teaching ESL, right?
Mm.
And they're doing their thing and whatever. But when I look back at my time in Itaewon, my girlfriend was from Sweden, so we had that community with the Swedish Alliance. My other friends are from Russia. There's and not even that they're different countries. These are new people. It's like moving to, if I moved to Los Angeles today, I only know, well, I do know one person in Los Angeles. I moved to I don't know, Dallas. Like I don't know anybody in Dallas. That would be a pretty big experience. It's kind of the same even if you're with the expats. I think it's more of a problem for the students especially that we're, Kevin's example of Korean students that go abroad, they're not like getting much out of it.
Right.
A lot of times they're going with, if it's not even a close friend, it's somebody in their abroad program, and they do like orientation, whatever, before, and they become buddies, and then they pair off and they go to, Calgary together.
There's
And then,
definitely a continuum here, and the important
yeah,
thing I think to kind of wrap up is that there's no right or wrong end to the continuum, right? Like you can go to Korea and live fully expat life and still have a good time and still grow as a person. Or you could go into Korea and never speak English again and still grow as a person. And
that's a better point, right? Because you could still, it's still an experience, it's just different.
yeah, I mean, I do agree. I think students who are doing that, I would personally say that that's the wrong way to do a study abroad program. But at the same time, maybe it's not the wrong way. Maybe it's just their way of doing it. I would recommend meeting people that you can if you're on a study program. But if you're living abroad or whatever, again, it's a continuum, and we all experience things differently. And what I obviously the way I've done it, I think is the right way, and the way you've done it, you think is the right way.
Right.
But it's not objectively right or wrong in
Yeah,
I'm being pretty
most
judgy, and
cases.
glass houses, right?
Oh, believe me, I
So
like to judge
yeah,
just as much as anyone. I mean, come on,
yeah,
Jack, you don't even speak Korean. I'll judge
exactly,
as much as we
exactly.
can. But
Yeah,
yeah.
but I'm not saying that you're living a worse life than me because you don't speak Korean. You're doing your own thing, and your own thing is
So
is
maybe
just as cool as my thing.
the takeaway should be aware of,
That's good. Always. Yeah. Be
self-aware, like
mindful.
not just so that you are self-critical, but so that you put yourself in the position that you want to be in. If you're traveling with if it's you just got married and you're going to do the ESL honeymoon thing for a year, well, you
Hmm.
should be prioritizing that, not learning French. That should not be your priority. Like,
yeah.
you just got married,
Fair
dude.
point.
Like, leave the baguettes alone. Pay attention to her. You know. So,
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess
Yeah.
yeah, and we'll wrap up. But I
Yeah. I got
agree
it bound.
with yeah. You wanna take us out, Kev?
Oh no, I think this is already a good summary. It's
Yeah,
a fun discussion. It's a fun thought to see where what life is and what life has been, and it's deep. We we should
yeah.
all get together and like have a drink and then talk about this a little bit more.
Well, it's been a minute since we were together.
It
So
has.
the
It
soul
has.
patch is back, baby. We can say that
Hopefully,
emphatically.
we'll see. Let's
Yeah,
do what
let's
we
make it
can.
happen. It's fun.
yeah,
Miss you guys.
yeah.
But as
Same.
we know with technology, it makes it easy, but at the same time, it's not as easy as we thought it
Not
should
as
be.
easy as it looks. Yeah. Um, for our listeners out there, it's great to be back, and we appreciate your, uh, you know, uh,
If you're
listening
still
to our
here, good job.
podcast. Yeah, yeah. And so you can send us an email, soulpatch, the soulpatch at gmail.com, or you can visit our website, thesoulpatch.com, if you want to check out older episodes of the show. And we're going to be throwing this up on YouTube as well. And so you can check us out there as well. And with that said, we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Have a good
Bye-bye.
weekend.